All right, so it's good to see you all. Today we're doing a sequence I call hips and twists, and on the surface it's two hip openers. That's a little bit of a funny term because so much of what we do in yoga and especially yin opens the hips. So that's one of those terms that people will use in different ways, but that's what these two poses do. They definitely open up the hips. And then we have two twists that also open up the hips, and the hip openers also open up the spine. So this is, again, one of my sequences that combines hips and spine and the lower body energetic channels, the meridians, what we call the yin meridians in Chinese medicine. So it's a fairly well-rounded yin practice. It might look on the surface a little bit random, two hip openers, two twists, but actually we work all four major myofascial compartments in the hips. We work the spine through its different articulations. And anytime you're combining things like that, there is always going to be a little bit of compromise. So I'm not going to say it's going to be your deepest hip opening sequence or your deepest spinal work, but you're going to hit on both of those. And generally speaking, you'll get more than you would just throughout your normal day. So you're already sort of getting a benefit of moving outside of what you would normally get just sitting at your desk or doing whatever it is you would normally do during your day. Okay, so we're going to start with a half butterfly. We'll take the right leg out straight. Bring the left foot to the inside of the thigh. And then we just want to come forward and down in a relaxed manner. So as always, I'm going to encourage you to relax. You could even turn your palms up. That's one way of making sure you're avoiding the temptation to not relax, to pull or to yank yourself into the poses. Okay, so you relax and just let gravity take over. And if it's a little too intense, then you could use blocks under your forearms, forehead, left knee. If it's not intense enough, you can try sitting on a block or a blanket. That might tilt you forward a little more. Or you can choose an alternate posture to give you a deeper stretch. I encourage you to do that as opposed to grabbing your foot or leg and trying to pull yourself or yank yourself down. And what we want to feel here is a little bit of a stretch in the back of our right thigh. And we want to round our back, so the back is gently stretching. And you may or may not feel that, just sort of depends on your overall health. And today we're doing nice long 5-minute holds, what I like to call the gold standard in yin. And we're already about 1.5 minutes in, so we've got about 3.5 minutes left here. Okay, so just gradually coming up. You can do that on an inhalation if you like. And then we switch legs. And this is a half butterfly again. And once again, nice and relaxed. So I'm not pulling or yanking, as that can add to the risk of injury. Not saying you're immediately going to get injured doing that. Okay, you might be able to do that for a long time without injury. And that's the thing about the power of yoga. So yoga can both heal us, usually gradually over time. We gradually notice changes. It's very rarely it's instant. I'm not going to say that that never happens, because what do I know? But what I do know is I've had a lot of experience. I've taught for a long time, and I've seen people heal gradually over time or grow. Spiritually or emotionally or physically, they're able to do more things over time. That came from consistent and persistent practice over time. Anyone who thinks they're going to go to one yoga class and instantly feel better, they may be in for a big surprise. Again, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. So maybe your first yoga class, you felt like $1,000,000. That's exactly what I was looking for. Awesome. That's great. But for many people, it takes persistent, consistent, sort of a dedication. And, you might say a little bit of faith that this is working, that this is going to work, because the results often aren't instant. What maybe is not talked about enough, often enough, or sometimes at all, is that injuries also happen in the same way. So this may not injure me today, but if I continue doing that over days, weeks, months, years, even decades, one day I might wake up and there's a shooting pain in my back, and I go and get an x-ray, go to the doctor, and she says something like, oh, your lower back, all the vertebrae, have been pulled apart, and the discs are bulging and they're pulled apart and they're frayed. And why did that happen? Well, from years and years and years of pulling and yanking yourself down. Now, again, I'm not saying that's a guaranteed thing to happen. Neither the benefits nor the risks are guaranteed. So you may know someone who's been doing that for a long time and they've been fine. But my point is why risk it? You get all the benefit just relaxing here. And if it's not intense enough, then let me know. And I'll teach you how to modify this. And you can do a different posture instead so that it has the intensity that you're looking for. All right, we've got about just 2 more minutes left here. Okay, so let's come on up and we will do a rebound. And the best way to do that is before you do any counter stretching or hugging your legs or wiggling around, as long as it feels safe to do so, you unwind onto your back and just relax in stillness. Now, while you relax, the best thing to do is really to feel into your bodily experience and notice what sensations you feel and where you feel them and how they are changing or evolving as you rest there, because they will be changing and evolving. Okay, let's bring our legs in. We'll give them a little squeeze and we just move a little bit to as a counter stretch. This is called the leg cradle. And you just move around a little bit, shake it out, bring some relief to your body. And then before we continue, we will do a stabilizing move called the hinge. So our hands go under the hips, palms down. We extend our legs straight up. Now, if there's any pain in your back, you're going to bend your knees, otherwise legs straight. And we lift our head and neck, take a nice deep breath. And as we exhale, we gradually lower the legs toward the ground. And just before they touch, pause, take a deep breath in, and then exhale and relax back onto your back. Okay, our next posture is called cattail pose. And to do the cattail, what we'd like is to take our, I'm going to move over to the left edge of my mat. That's completely optional. That's up to you depending on your space that you're in and how your mat's laid out. I'm going to take my left leg up, drop it over to the left all the way. So you see my hip is drawn over. My left hip is drawn over my right hip. And then I take my right leg, I move it back, I scoot it back as much as I can, like so. Prop my head up on my hand and elbow to start. You can change that later. You can change almost everything later. And then I bend that back knee, reach back, grab the foot, and pull the heel in towards the buttocks. And what I want to feel is a stretch in the front of my right thigh. Okay, so you can already see I'm starting to change things. So I've bent my left knee, I'm bringing my knee closer to my face. So these are all options for you in your pose, depending on how you feel. Generally speaking, the knee closer to your face is more of an intense stretch for the opposite thigh. The legs are actually connected with appropriately enough connective tissue, fascia. You can take that leg straight. Generally, the straighter it is, the more intense it is, once again. The head, you can keep it where it is. I like it here, but you can rest your head on your upper arm, on a block, on the ground. Some people actually like to use this hand and they grab their left foot and pull it up manually. Those are what we like to affectionately call the flexies, really flexible people. I know it's tempting in yoga to think that a flexi is better at yoga than you are if you are inflexible like me. But that's just simply not true. They're just more flexible. It does mean that perhaps they have more options in terms of postures. It also often means that they have less stability in their joints and that it's easier for them to damage their joints and hurt their joints. So generally in life, every plus comes with a minus, generally speaking. So generally, if you're more flexible, that also means you're less stable. And you may have to work a lot on strengthening and proper form when exercising to avoid injuring your joints. Something that less flexible people don't think about a lot. They can jump around and do whatever, and they've never injured their joints. They've never hurt themselves. More flexible people, they do a yoga class, it feels great, and then afterwards they have these nagging pains. I'm not talking about muscle soreness or muscle aches. They really hurt their joint. And it may take them a long time to figure out that that's what's happening. Certain poses are actually hurting them. It might take them a long time to figure out what poses are. And then it might take them equally as long or even longer to figure out how to avoid that. So again, you might see that girl in class with both legs behind her head, and she seems super beautiful and flexible, and you think, I just wish I could do that. But be careful what you wish for. So again, usually that will come with certain elements that might be challenging. Other things to look at is this back foot. I'm just pulling it in. It could be closer to the ground or higher up. And some people like to kick it back and lean back into it. And since this is one of our 2 twists, and it's our only back bend, doing that can be very advantageous today. So you can lean back into it, deepen the back bend, and deepen the twist. We do have another twist later on, so don't worry about that if you don't feel like doing that right now, although you will miss emphasizing the back bend. This is just our only back bend in today's class. Okay, so gradually, let's come on out of that, back onto our back. And I'm going to invite you to take a very brief rebound, so it's not going to be a long one like last time, but just a moment on our back. And just try and feel both sides of the body, especially both thighs, and just see if you can sense or feel a difference. Now, there's no right or wrong answer here. You feel what you feel, right? You just feel what you feel. But hopefully, if you did that properly, you feel this side, the right leg, is just a little more alive, a little more vibrant. It feels lighter, it feels more stimulated. You can maybe, I don't know, it's like it's tingling. That's kind of how my leg feels. So all of that is a result of that stretch that we did. And that is very good for you on a cellular level, even down to your cells. Your cells are being stimulated. They like that. Your cells are like little organisms. They're little life forms, and they need to be stimulated and exercised as well. So whether you think on a personal level that that was any kind of big deal, it actually is on a cellular level. A lot is happening, a lot of good stuff. Okay, let's take it over to the other side. We bring our right leg up this time, and we drop it over just like last time. Okay, again, I recommend propping your head up at least to start. Take the legs wide apart, and then you bend that knee, reach back, and grab the foot. Okay, so this is, again, cat-tail pose. Once again, you can kick back and lean back if that makes sense for your body. I'm going to continue pulling the foot in, but I will lean back a little bit. to try and get a deeper twist and a little more back bend out of this. The main thing you should feel, again, is the stretch at the front of your left thigh. Those are the quads. And so, again, I mentioned hip opener is an interesting term because different people have different ideas of what that means, hip opening poses. But in at least a technical sense, this posture is a hip opening posture because we are at least potentially opening up the hip flexors and the quadricep muscle group. Potentially, and if we're doing the posture properly, I'll say that much as well. So if you're not doing that, something is off or something isn't working properly in your posture. That doesn't always mean that you're doing it wrong. It might mean that you have an excess of flexibility and that you need to do things slightly differently, or we need to modify your posture or give you a different posture to get the same benefits. Okay, so once again, let's unwind back onto our back. We'll just relax there for a moment. And it's be interesting to just check back in. How do the two thighs feel in comparison? Again, I get it. in today's modern, industrialized, information age society we live in, this seems trite, unimportant. So what? I feel a little tingling in my thigh. Not important. Well, many people are discovering that actually it is important. That it is important for us from time to time to get out of our heads where we've created a whole, you might call it, alternate reality. The world is one way and we think it's another way. Don't believe me? Talk to another person, anybody, about the way that the world is. And you're going to find disagreements. So again, the world is just how it is. But some people are going to think certain actions are good. Others are going to think those same actions are bad. Some people are going to think certain groups of people are good. Other people are going to think that same group of people are bad. So there's no agreement there. And we each have our own individual world in our head. And most of us have created a really scary world. We live in a very scary world. And most of us just think, no, I just see it as it is. I just see it as it is. But what we can learn if we get into the deeper end of the yogic pool, the psychological and the mental part of it, through things like meditation, is that it's just not true. We have created this very scary reality up here, and the reality of the world is very different than that. So feeling your body, getting out of your head, feeling your body, is one first step toward getting out of your head. All right, let's bring our legs in. We'll give them a little squeeze. We shake it out, a little bit of gentle movement. Again, there's no one particular way to do this. You see, I'm just doing this thing because that feels good right now. Tomorrow or even the next pose, I might do something completely different. And then this time we're going to hinge up. So same thing as before, but this time we come on up to seated. And now we come to a slightly, potentially more challenging posture, at least for some folks, for some people. Okay, so not saying this is necessarily a particularly hard pose, but at least some people, myself included, will find this more challenging. Okay, so this is called a half dragonfly. So for half dragonfly, we're going to turn toward the left foot, and this time I will reach down and I'm just going to hold the foot. Now holding the foot is different than pulling, so I'm not pulling myself down, I'm just holding the foot. That's going to keep me in place. Otherwise, I have to use these muscles to hold me here, and that's not very relaxing. If I relax, I come back to center. So I just gently hold the foot. Yes, there's a little work in my fingers to hold me here, but it's not much. Okay, and then now what I want to see is, do I feel a stretch here and here? Both. I'd like a stretch in the inside of my left thigh, so left thigh, right waist and ribs. So if you feel it, great, just stay right there. If you don't, then begin to do this move, stacking or rolling your right shoulder over your left. A little bit hidden here, doing the peekaboo move on you. So I'm peeking out underneath my arm. You can see mine is not pretty. I'm not trying to do this in any kind of way that would impress someone in a photo. Right? This isn't something I'd want to take a photo of and put it on Instagram and say, hey, look at my yoga practice. And unfortunately, that's how a lot of people think of yoga today. There are influencers and people on Instagram who have millions of followers, hundreds of thousands, millions of followers, and they just have pictures of them doing these perfect yoga poses. Now, in the one sense, there's nothing wrong with that, right? If people like to look at people doing yoga, then great. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. On the other hand, there's a problem if people begin thinking that that's what yoga is supposed to look like. Because usually these people are going to be very flexible people. They're people that may have been, and if they haven't been, in another life, they could have been gymnasts, professional dancers, um, or other, maybe work for Cirque du Soleil. So again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a beautiful thing. But the fact of the matter is most of us will never be able to do those things. It doesn't matter how hard we work. Our body just isn't designed to do that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, people with that level of flexibility may be challenged to avoid injuring themselves at various times. It's something that you can do easily without injury, without thinking about. They may actually have to be more careful, and they may have to strengthen certain muscle groups to keep from avoiding injury, and they have to engage certain muscles consciously to avoid injury. Okay, so just gradually coming back up. And once again, you might just take a moment as you switch sides to survey both legs. We're not going to rest back or anything like that, but you might just see how you feel. one side, one leg versus the other that hasn't been stimulated yet. And then as you're ready, just make your way over to the other side. Same thing, this is our half dragonfly pose, okay? Now again, some people might see me doing this and think that I have a lot of flexibility, but I know people who have much more flexibility than I do in this direction. So it's all relative, and again, it's not important. Well, I shouldn't say that. You can get to a point where you have an unsafe level of inflexibility. Okay, so I wish they would teach this in school as part of physical education, but maybe they do in some schools, but I certainly didn't learn it, and I went to a pretty good private school growing up. You can reach an unsafe level of inflexibility. You can also have an unsafe level of flexibility, as we've already alluded to, that some people actually have to work to try and control the stability of their joints. Most people are somewhere in the middle, but many Americans are reaching a level of unsafe inflexibility. It's much rarer for the general population to have an unsafe level of flexibility. It's less rare in yoga studios and amongst, say, yoga practitioners and teachers. So if you are like me, you are a professional yoga teacher, then you may see, people on a regular basis who perhaps have had trouble with their stabilizing their joints, and they dislocate their shoulder or their hips or other things like that on a fairly regular basis. But most Americans are at the other end of the spectrum, and so they may see me doing this and think that, I have some kind of extreme level of flexibility. Mine's pretty average. Because I have stretched pretty regularly for quite a while, I've maximized my level of flexibility for the most part. So my joints are pretty much as open as they can be. I'm not going to say that maybe there isn't still room for improvement there, because there might be. But many of my postures, they're about as deep as they're ever going to go safely. And if I try and force the issue and try and go further or deeper, then I greatly increase my risk of injuring myself. And again, as I mentioned earlier, those injuries often aren't instant. They would come from persistently and consistently trying to push beyond the safe limit of what my body can do. 2 more minutes. Okay, so again, gradually coming up, and if possible, making your way back onto your back without a lot of counter stretching or extra movement. And then just noticing what you feel in the body. Good, let's bring our legs in. We'll give them a little squeeze. We shake it out, a little bit of movement. And then we finish with a pose called twisted roots. And what we're doing is taking the left leg over the right leg, like so. And you can lock ankles if you want, but it's not necessary. So totally up to you what's comfortable and possible for you. And then we'll drop the knees to the left, which might feel unusual for you, might feel wrong. Okay, so left over right, down to the left. And this is called twisted roots. Okay, so we're here and we're stretching the side of our hip, maybe the waist, and then up here in our chest. We're twisting the spine as well. And I can have my head in any position, I have my arms in any position that's comfortable, and same with my legs. I could put something under my knees if I like, under my shoulder if I like, but I don't want to interfere with the twisting and the stretching. So too much support can be comfortable but not effective. Too little support for some people can be dangerous. So just keep that in mind. All right, so we just gradually unwind from that one. And same thing on the other side. So again, make sure you know your left and your right. Right knee over left, and then down to the right, which again might feel a little bit awkward or uncomfortable. My knees and my shoulder are both in the air. That's okay. I feel safe that way. Not necessarily comfortable, but again, comfort isn't an essential aspect of this practice. It's not that we want to be extremely uncomfortable. And in an interesting sense, we want to be comfortable with discomfort. I know that might sound very contradictory, but there are many layers to being a human being, and we can find comfort, you might say, on each level. And so somebody who is truly an advanced yogi, or someone who's truly spiritually advanced, is someone who can find comfort even amongst a lot of physical discomfort. So I'll use the example of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. So here's a man who was hung on a cross, and he was, very, very painful way to die. And he had a moment when he was on the cross, and where he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? Kind of you might say, a moment of doubt or fear, a very human moment, right? Even though he knew this was part of a bigger plan, he had sort of a very human moment of, what are you asking of me, kind of thing. And then he surrendered, not my will, but thy will. And then he found peace, and he found comfort amongst physical discomfort. And one might even say that potentially the physical discomfort went away for him at that point, that he was identifying with a deeper part of himself, and that freed him of kind of the burden of the physical experience. So again, that's just one example. I'm not suggesting one way or another about how you should think about Jesus. This is just a fairly common example that most people, at least in the Western part of the world, would know about. I think probably around the world at this point, everyone knows, most people know who Jesus is and his story. So that's just an example of where there can be times, and again, spiritually speaking, we want to learn to do this, where we more and more can allow levels of physical discomfort, and it doesn't take away our emotional or psychological comfort, or I could say spiritual, right? Mental, psychological, emotional discomfort. And this is possible. There have been countless stories of yogis who could endure a lot of physical discomfort and pain and things like that without losing their inner sense of peace. So again, in the Bible, this is called the peace that passeth all understanding. It's a peace that doesn't really make sense. If you're hung on a cross, should you have peace? No, you shouldn't. You should be in a lot of pain and screaming and just hating life. But it's possible spiritually to learn to find peace in every situation, regardless of our circumstance, our physical circumstance. So I know those are very lofty ideas, but what I wanted to convey to you is that even shows up here. Yoga can start in a very simple, basic way with these postures, but we can begin learning very powerful and deep spiritual lessons if we are willing to approach the practice in the right way. And when I say right way, I don't mean, the morally correct way, or like the other way is evil, or you're a sinner if you do it another way. I just mean the right way is the way that allows us to expand our comfort zone, just like I'm talking about. More and more of life becomes accessible to us, and we find our peace in more and more areas of our life. And when we find peace, we find joy. And isn't that what we're looking for in life, really? All the money, all the success, all the adoration, all the approval, all the love that we're looking for, isn't that really what we're looking for, is a sense of contentment, peace, and joy? All right, let's go ahead and unwind from this, and we'll just rest on our back for a moment. And just go ahead and bring your legs in, give them a little squeeze, shake it out a bit. Again, there's no one particular way to do that. Just sort of listen to your body, notice what you're feeling. And then whenever you're ready, I'm going to invite you to unwind onto your back comfortably. This is called pentacle and yin. Any comfortable position on your back. You can use props if you need them. And the idea is just to allow your body to be still for about 6 minutes or so. So if you have a phone there, go ahead and set your timer for 6 minutes. Close your eyes, relax your body, and see if for just the next 6 minutes you can just stay still. Let your body be still. Relax. Don't think about the next thing. Just be there, feeling that sense of relaxation in the body.